Act 1. The Incident. June 15th, 2017. A sleepy Thursday afternoon in Beach City, Ohio. At 4:36 p.m., Stark County emergency dispatchers received a chilling 911 call from a rural farmhouse. No words, no screams, just silence. Then, click. When deputies arrived at the Stockdale family residence, the front door was already open. A body was sprawled near the entryway. There were no signs of life, just the oppressive stillness that follows catastrophe. Deputies raised their voices, issued verbal commands. No response. Suddenly, a single gunshot shattered the silence from inside the home. Rushing in, they found 25-year-old Jacob Stockdale on the floor, a shotgun by his side. Blood soaked the wooden planks. He had shot himself in the head, but somehow he was still breathing. Upstairs, the officers found something far worse. Jacob's mother, Kathy, and his youngest brother, James, were both dead, their bodies torn apart by shotgun blasts, left on the bathroom floor like discarded objects. There was no struggle, there was no escape, only the aftermath of a massacre that no one saw coming. Act 2. Timeline of discovery. The Stockdales were supposed to be the model of conservative Christian values, a tight-knit family of 6 who played bluegrass music, homeschooled their children, and preached about godly discipline. They had even been featured on the reality TV show Wife Swap years earlier, known for their rigid rules, self-sufficient lifestyle, and near-total isolation from modern culture. But behind that smiling, fiddle-playing image was a pressure cooker no one dared to touch. After the shooting, Jacob was rushed to the hospital, critically injured, barely conscious, and unable to speak. For days, investigators could do nothing but wait and piece together what little they could. The father, Tim Stockdale, had been away at the time of the murders. He returned to find his wife and son dead, and another son clinging to life. His statements to the media were numb, reserved. He expressed grief. He offered no speculation. The remaining brothers, Calvin and Charles, who had both left the family home years earlier, remained silent in the beginning. But their absence said more than words ever could. Why had Jacob snapped? Was this revenge, mental illness, or was it something far more horrifying? Act 3. The victims and their life. Kathy Stockdale was known as a devoted mother. Her life revolved around raising her 4 sons with unshakable Christian values. But she was also relentlessly strict, installing a rigid set of rules in their household. No television, no internet, no dating, no friends outside the family. The boys were homeschooled. Their social lives were limited to church, farming chores, and performing in the family's bluegrass band. James, the youngest, was just 21 when he was killed. He was pursuing a business degree and had dreams of managing the family band. He was described as joyful, artistic, and full of potential. He was the light of the family, the one everyone believed would carry their legacy forward. But even James, by then, had been shaped by a life of near-complete control. Fun was earned through tokens. Talking back meant losing privileges. Every moment was accounted for. Every joy came with a price. The Stockdale family believed this was discipline. But Jacob, he may have believed it was a cage. And when the cage finally broke, it did so with unspeakable violence. Act 4. Crime Scene Breakdown. The farmhouse was eerily clean. No signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle. Just 2 lifeless bodies upstairs and a wounded young man bleeding out beside a shotgun. Investigators carefully moved through the house. In the bathroom, they found 54-year-old Kathy Stockdale and her youngest son, James, both fatally shot at close range. The shotgun blasts had torn through them with devastating force. The coroner's report would later confirm Kathy was shot once in the head, James twice. Downstairs, Jacob had apparently turned the weapon on himself, aiming at his head, but the bullet didn't kill him. He was rushed to the hospital, barely conscious, suffering from a massive brain injury and permanent blindness in one eye. No suicide note, no manifesto, just blood, death, and a silence that would stretch for years. And one more detail. The shotgun Jacob used belonged to his father, Tim. It had been in the house for years. But Jacob didn't just find it, he had prepared it. This wasn't a spontaneous act, it was planned, deliberate. a cold, methodical execution. Act 5. Suspicion and Lies. As the news broke, neighbors in the quiet rural community of Beach City were stunned. The Stockdales were supposed to be the epitome of Christian purity. They played music at local fairs. They were polite, soft-spoken, reserved. What went wrong? Publicly, the surviving family tried to downplay any sense of dysfunction. Calvin, the oldest brother, released a statement mourning James, describing him as a catalyst of joy, a future businessman with a heart for people. Their father, Tim, spoke of Kathy as a wonderful mother devoted to faith and family. But neither of them mentioned Jacob. And behind the scenes, those who had watched their wife swap episode years earlier started resurfacing clips. The rigidness of the home, the token economy, the 25-cent fines, the punishments for not smiling while doing chores, the fear of going to hell for watching television. To outsiders, it had once seemed quirky, maybe even admirable. Now it looked like a blueprint for psychological collapse. The show's temporary mother, Lori Tonkovic, had cried on camera for the boys. Years later, in an interview, she said,
"I knew something wasn't right.
"Those kids weren't just disciplined, they were afraid." No official motive was released, but those who paid attention didn't need one. Act 6. The turning point. Jacob survived. Against the odds, and perhaps against his own wishes, he lived. But his mind was shattered. He was declared temporarily incompetent to stand trial, moved from the hospital to Heartland Behavioral Health Institute, diagnosed, observed, tested. He made 2 escape attempts. In one, he hid behind bookshelves. In another, he tried to blend in with a crowd leaving the facility. Both failed, but they revealed something critical. Jacob was capable of planning, of acting independently, of understanding consequences. After years of delays, pandemic interruptions, and psychological evaluations, the state declared him mentally fit to stand trial. In April 2021, nearly 4 years after the murders, Jacob Stockdale pleaded guilty to the murders of his mother and brother. His sentence? 2 15-year terms. Eligible for parole in 2048, 15 years for 2 lives. The courtroom was quiet. There was no protest, no outrage. In fact, his own family had begged for leniency. Why? Was it forgiveness? Or was it shame? Act 7. Psychology and motive. What drives a 25-year-old man, raised in a God-fearing family band, to execute his mother and little brother with a shotgun? That's the question that still echoes. Some say Jacob Stockdale was a ticking time bomb, a prisoner of purity, raised in emotional isolation, where every decision was dictated, every joy filtered through a moral lens, and every human desire labeled a sin. In the wife swap episode, when shown a harmless television show, Jacob broke down and cried, not from joy or guilt, but from terror. He whispered to his temporary guardian, "I'm afraid I'll go to hell." That wasn't entertainment to him. That was damnation. Jacob wasn't just controlled. He was indoctrinated. Years of homeschooling, manual labor, rigid faith, and deprivation had created a world so small, so suffocating, that he likely had no identity outside of it. And yet something inside him rebelled. Experts speculate 2 possible motives. 1. Rage. The quiet, simmering anger of a child raised without freedom, who watched the world from a distance but was never allowed to enter it. And when he saw his youngest brother James, joyful, hopeful, maybe even on the verge of escape, he snapped. The second theory is darker, more tragic, that Jacob believed what he was doing was an act of mercy, that he didn't want James to endure the same inner torment, that the only way to protect him from the world or from their mother was to erase it. It wasn't logic, it was despair. That's what makes this case so chilling, not just the violence, but the silence that led to it. Act 8. Aftermath and emotional echo. Today, Jacob Stockdale sits in prison, blind in one eye, his brain permanently damaged from the failed suicide attempt. He doesn't speak to the media, no interviews, no explanations, no apologies. He may never explain why he did it, and if he does, it may not make sense. But one thing is undeniable. Behind the music, behind the farm, behind the well-meaning facade of Christian values, there was a prison bill of rules and fear, a place where childhood was traded for obedience, where joy had to be earned through tokens, where love was real but freedom was forbidden. And in the end, that repression didn't raise a saint. It created a killer. In one of the final videos posted to Kathy's YouTube channel, Jacob and James performed together, singing the haunting folk song, Tall Buildings. It's about the dread of growing up, of losing your innocence, of becoming something you never wanted to be. The lyrics? Goodbye to the sunshine, goodbye to the dew, goodbye to the flowers, and goodbye to you. 3 months later, Jacob killed James. So was it a cry for help or a confession hiding in plain sight? We may never know. But one thing is certain, this wasn't just a murder. It was the implosion of a belief system. The question isn't why Jacob did it. The question is, how many others are still out there, quietly breaking behind perfect walls?